Hey art nerds, we are on our final How to Draw Flowers video. Today we're going to be drawing a snapdragon. We've drawn 18 very different flowers, but if there's a favorite flower that I haven't yet drawn, please let me know in the comments below. We're working with two reference images today. This image of a snapdragon where we can more clearly see the parts of the flower, and then this image where we can see the snapdragon buds. I'm going to have links down in the description below to the original sources, which is great if you're interested in gardening because many of these are from nurseries. The materials we're using are very simple. We have a Blick Studio Watercolor Sketchbook, we have a mechanical pencil with H lead, and then we have a Sakura Pigma FB brush pen. And these are materials I use all the time, so these are not one materials. These are materials you buy them once and you're going to use them for everything. So to start with our snapdragon, we start with a line of action and then we draw kind of a curved conical shape. And we're going to do that for the buds as well. And this is a form of volumetric drawing. We're starting with very simple shapes and we're going to add details and make them more complex. If you're interested in learning more about drawing in general, I have a few videos on volumetric drawing that will teach you everything you need to know to learn how to break down the world around you. So as we did with some of our more complex flower shapes, we're going to break this snapdragon down into kind of the individual flowers. So what's interesting about this is that we really have a complex flower. There's a lot of flowers on a single stalk and we're going to draw a bunch of them. So kind of like with the cherry blossom or with the hydrangea, we have these flowers that are multiple flowers in one and they're not particularly difficult to draw. You just need patience to draw them over and over and over and over again and the ability to kind of rotate them in space so you have a 3D form. So for the flower buds right now, I'm really just thinking about kind of like corn on the cob or wheat, how we have these overlapping kernels. That's what it appears to me. And then in the background one, this is going to be the bud that's more developed and has some of the flowers starting to peek out from their buds. Okay, so we have our shapes kind of blocked in. The next step is to go in and add some more detail. And I have a lot of different drawing tutorials here on this channel. I have a favorite drawing tutorials playlist that you guys might enjoy. I have a whole origami playlist where I not only teach you how to draw the things that are being shown, but I teach you how to paint and ink them. So for the snapdragon flowers, they're kind of unusually shaped. It's got like this large oval sort of pillow-shaped petal, and then at the top it's got two large overlapping petals, kind of like with the pansy, and then at the bottom there's like 3 petals, but they're not necessarily distinct petals. And for this one I worked really closely from my reference that was over on the computer screen just off shot. So if you're drawing along with me, I would highly recommend you bring up those references that I'm going to link down in the description and work from those. I also want to point out that this video has been time-lapsed by about 2. That way we have a shorter video, but you need to give yourself the time you need to draw. Don't try to draw this fast. Draw at your own pace. And it's okay if you have to erase a lot, if you make a lot of mistakes while you're still learning. That's fine. I've been drawing for over 20 years. I draw every day. I frequently draw from reference. I draw comics. So I do a lot of drawing. So I have a fairly large mental library and I'm fairly confident in what I'm doing. But that's 20 years of doing it every day. That is not something that I expect other people to be able to do, and that's not something you should beat yourself up over if you're not able to do it. You need to be patient with yourself and give yourself time to learn. I made so many more mistakes and I still make a lot of mistakes. So I don't want to come across as holier than thou or like I'm trying to set myself on a pedestal. I'm really just trying to tell you this so that you know that it's not a competition. You know not to beat yourself up over it. Give yourself the time you need. So now that we have our base flowers drawn, we're going to start inking, and we're inking with a Sakura Pigma FB brush pen. These are one of my favorite brush pens. I have no affiliation with Sakura. We have no deal, no sponsorship, nothing. I think they know I exist, but just barely. But I love these pens. You can get them almost anywhere. I order mine in multi-packs on Amazon. I use them in my classes. I love them because they are alcohol marker safe and they're waterproof. So that means they're good for almost anything I want to do. We start by inking our less developed bud, the bud that's in the foreground that overlaps our flowers. And you can see we mostly have these teardrop shapes that are kind of spiraling around the bud and overlapping one another. A few of the blossoms way down at the bottom are starting to bloom first. And that's pretty typical for flowers, is that the blooms down at the bottom, closer to the roots, closer to the nutrients, tend to be the first ones to start to bloom on these kind of flowering plants. Okay, so we're going to start inking the main flower. We're going to work really slowly. We're starting with that pillow-like shape. And I'm adding a little bit of detail as I go, and I'm really working heavily from the reference because I don't have a lot of experience with Snapdragons. I'm also adding some striations along the bottom of that petal. In the reference image, you'll notice that one of the ones I chose, that particular petal is like a very vibrant pink, and that made seeing what was going on with this flower a lot easier. So with this, we're just going to kind of work flower by flower. As with some of our other more complex flowers, we did have some key flowers, key flowerets that are really important to capture. And once you capture that, you can kind of just fill in the rest. It doesn't have to be as detailed. You do want to kind of have a variety of levels of detail in your floral art, because otherwise it starts to become like detail overload. And some people have art styles that work very well for that, but mine is too cartoony for that to work. You need a very clean art style, I think, or a very abstract art style for that to work. So my challenge is to caricature this flower in a way where it's still recognizable, it's still an appealing flower, and it doesn't have so much visual detail that you become confused. So I'm just going to work kind of slowly, kind of figuring out what I'm doing as I go along. That's okay. The point of working so much from reference is not only to get an accurate depiction of what we're drawing, but to build up a mental library that we can refer to time and again. So to me, drawing from reference, drawing like this, I'm investing in myself. I'm investing in my future artwork. I'm investing in myself as an artist, and I'm increasing my repertoire. So something I mentioned in the marigold video is that I am going to scan the line arts for all 18 flowers, and I'm going to make them available to purchase on Gumroad or free to my wonderful art nerds over on Patreon. That way they can print them out and they can paint along with me when we do our How to Paint Flowers series, which is going to be coming up. And if you're interested in supporting the work I do, if you find it helpful, useful, inspiring, or informative, it would mean a lot to me if you would join me over on patreon.com/natosoup. We see no outside sponsorship. I don't work with any companies. I don't have any kind of deals going on. So everything is either out of my pocket or sponsored via Patreon or through donations on Ko-fi. So your support is really, really helpful in keeping this going, since it does take a lot of time and resources to create these sort of things. And I definitely try to make it worth my patrons' while. And I try to show my appreciation for their support in a variety of different ways, from early access videos to free printable line arts, to access to my comic and drawing classes, to prioritizing their requests during live streams. So if you like what I do and you want to help me to continue to do it, you can join me over there. Another way you can help that won't cost you a single dime, but it helps so much more than you realize, is to share my videos with other people you know, with people who might enjoy it. Just consider putting it out there, because you never know who in your friends or your family might also be interested in art. And so many people point out, oh, I don't have a lot of followers. But honestly, you don't need a lot of followers to share something you enjoy, and that's a good way to attract more people who share your interests, is by sharing what your interests actually are. I've made so many friends just by talking about books I enjoy, or comics I enjoy, or artists whose work means a lot to me, because then we can start to bond over common ground. And of course, this isn't applicable just to me. It applies to anyone whose work you enjoy. So as we're nearing the top of our Snapdragon, we have these smaller, less developed buds, these little flowerets. So I'm using circular shapes to depict them, and I'm overlapping them with teardrop-shaped sepals. And then you can see way at the top, I've kind of just drawn the silhouettes of the flowers. So not every flower on the Snapdragon is rendered the same amount. Not all of them have the same amount of detail. So now we're going to move to the bud in the background. This one is more developed than the one in the foreground. It's a little bit of storytelling here. We have the future, we have the present, and then we have the past. Or maybe I just like drawing flowers and buds. I don't know. They're such a hopeful symbol of spring and renewal and new life. And when spring comes around, I just start to feel so much more hopeful and inspired. So that's one of the reasons I really love drawing flowers, is it kind of captures that hope for the future, and it kind of captures that freshness. And flowers are such a big theme in my work. Flowers and nature and leaves and drawing a lot of grass. They're such an important part of my comic work and my illustration work. So spending this time drawing these flowers, hanging out with you guys, showing you guys my process and how I think about these things is such a nice way to connect. So for the background bud, I didn't add as much detail, and now I'm just bumping up the line art on our main Snapdragon flower just a little bit, just to kind of help push the other blooms into the background. Okay, so that was how to draw a Snapdragon. I hope you guys found it helpful, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye, guys.